Paula, thank you very much indeed for that. Very interesting. I know you're going to take your leave of us for the moment, so thank you very much indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very much over to you now for your questions. So if you have questions, please make your way to the microphones. It's slightly hard to see. I need to move a little forward of the lights to see if there's anyone standing at the microphones. Do we have anyone at the moment? No one wants to come down at the moment? Well, feel free to do that, and we will take your questions. I was just interested, Richard, in listening to you. Do you enjoy being controversial? Are you baiting religious people as much as anything?
No, I don't enjoy being controversial. I enjoy speaking out, speaking the truth, and I think that one needs to call a spade, but no, I don't particularly enjoy being controversial.
Okay. We have a gentleman over here at the microphone already. So, sorry, your point, please.
Mr. Dawkins, do you believe that animals, or maybe insects, will attain a level of consciousness such as we human beings enjoy?
Do I believe that animals are conscious, did you say?
No, will they ever attain a level of consciousness such as human beings have right now? In the future, of any time at all, will they ever achieve that?
I suspect that some probably already have. I mean, I suspect that chimpanzees and other apes and advanced carnivores such as dogs, wolves, cats may be conscious in a rather different form from ours.
I mean, to attain our level of consciousness.
Well, I would rather doubt it, at least in the near future. It's taken a very long time. Mammals have been going for a very long time, and our level of consciousness has only been very, very recently achieved. So I don't think it's one of those things that you can predict is likely to happen in the way that, say, you can predict that carnivores and herbivores are going to happen, or swimming animals are going to happen, or flying animals are going to happen. So if, say, there was another asteroid that destroyed life on this planet in the way that the dinosaurs were destroyed 65 million years ago, I think it was then predictable that something like the dinosaurs would arise again, which it did in the form of the mammals. But if an asteroid were to hit now and destroy us, I think it's not predictable that something like human consciousness would ever arise again. It might, but it's not predictable in the way that flight or sight or echolocation or swimming is predictable.
But if we take evolution to its natural conclusion, surely everything evolves, so is the gentleman not right in what he says?
No, there's no natural conclusion. You have to look at the past history of evolution, and you have to say there is a general pattern of evolution towards running speed, swimming speed, flying speed, but it looks as though human consciousness has only happened once, and so this looks like a pretty unique state of affairs.
Okay. Gentleman over here. Sir.
Professor Dawkins, I can completely sympathise with you losing your voice. I've only just managed to find mine after a nasty cold.
Could you talk a bit louder?
He says he's losing his voice.
Oh, he's lost his voice
yes.
too. Sorry. I sympathise deeply.
I wanted to ask, given the present state of the global population's understanding in education and philosophy and science, how do you imagine our world would be if everybody embraced atheism?
How would the world be if everybody embraced atheism? What did that have to do with the preamble to your question about a population?
Well, to a degree you've suggested that a number of people find a great deal of solace, perhaps even need, in religions. Are we ready to abandon religion as a global population, do you think?
Well, I have some doubts about the solace that's offered by religion, I must say. I usually bend over backwards to concede that it might offer some solace. I recognize that some people think that they would find life intolerable if they thought that there was no ultimate meaning to it. If I were in better voice, I would have a go at persuading people that actually there is huge meaning to be had from a scientific view of life which revels in our understanding of its meaning and does not take false comfort in a hope, a vain hope, of some kind of eternal meaning. Then when people say they get solace from religion, I then wonder about those people who actually are terrified of going to hell. Now, I know that modern enlightened Christians no longer teach children about going to hell, but quite a lot of modern Christians are not enlightened. And children most certainly are taught about going to hell, and many of them, I'm extremely sorry to say, believe it. And so there are plenty of people who are terrified of dying. I'm so sorry. Who are terrified of dying, not because it's oblivion, because after all, what's frightening about oblivion? As Mark Twain said, I was dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and never suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. However, if you believe that you're going to suffer eternal, fiery torments, which many people have been persuaded by evil preachers and teachers, I repeat, evil, to believe, then it seems to me that that's likely to give the very opposite of solace. If we had no religion, we would have, I suggest, if not no suicide bombers, far fewer suicide bombers. We would have, in very many ways, I think life would be indeed better.
But there would still be injustice in the world, surely.
There would still be injustice in the world, but there's no reason to think there'd be more injustice in the world. And I think, very arguably, there might be less.
Okay. So does that answer your point? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Just want to go to this lady over here. Thank you.
It's fairly easy to imagine how apes can develop into humans, but I don't find it as easy to imagine how bacteria can develop into apes. Could you describe some of the species in between?
Yes. The question says it's easy to imagine how apes could evolve into humans, but it's harder to imagine how bacteria could evolve into apes. Well, one very important difference is that the time it took for apes to change into humans is a matter of perhaps 5 million years, whereas the time it took for bacteria to evolve into apes was a matter of thousands of millions of years. So it is a huge difference. And what the human imagination is capable of visualizing gets more and more difficult the longer the time span is that you have to cope with. So the intermediates that you might expect to see would be, well, starting with bacteria, an early intermediate would be some kind of protozoan. That's to say, a single-celled animal, much more complicated than a bacterium, because it's a eukaryotic cell, which means that it's actually a kind of society of bacteria. The eukaryotic cell, which is all our cells, and protozoan cells, things like amoebas, are complex societies of bacteria. Bacteria actually came together in an agglomeration, working together to form this much larger, much more complex cell. A next stage in the intermediates would be a coming together of those cells, those eukaryotic cells, to form multicellular bodies, something like a sponge. A next stage would be perhaps something like a sea anemone, which has an inside and an outside and has a feeding mechanism. The next stage would be something like a worm, which has a front and a back and a left side and a right side, and which propels itself along the sea bottom. The next stage might be something like a fish, which, well, we know what a fish looks like. Much later still, some fish started emerging from the water, and we have extremely good fossil evidence of this stage in evolution, when fish emerged from the water and became amphibians. At a later stage still, these amphibians no longer needed to go back to water to reproduce and became reptiles. At a later stage still, they became mammal-like reptiles. Instead of going along with their feet splayed out sideways like a lizard. They rose with their limbs more vertical, and they may have grown hair at this stage. We don't know whether they grew hair at this stage, and walked on all fours, and there was a magnificent flowering of mammal-like reptiles, actually before the dinosaurs. During the period of the dinosaurs, the mammals went rather into eclipse. When the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, the mammals started to flourish and flower and produce the magnificent range of mammals that we see today, among whom were some rather shrew-like ones who went into the trees and became adept at swinging through the trees. Some of them became adept at swinging from their arms rather than their legs.